Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. This week my guest is Jess Conrad OBE. This episode was recorded in the grounds of his home in London, and you might hear the odd bird tweet and the occasional train going past, but we make reference to that during the episode. In this episode anyway, Jess tells me all about how he was starting in rep, working with the late great Charlie Drake, and of course, we talk about how he looks after himself. There are a couple of naughty words in this episode, and please remember that mirrors never lie. So please, sit back and enjoy the latest Panto podcast. My guest for today's Panto podcast is the legend himself. Can I get the ding, please, sir?
Ding!
Ding! It's Jess Conrad. Hello, Jess.
It's not my fault I'm over 6 foot tall and I have incredibly white teeth. It's not my fault. I just happen to be born like that. And Panto is something that I've always absolutely adored. My first Panto, I remember, was I'd been a film extra, and then to learn my trade I decided to become an actor, and I went into repertory. And my first pantomime was I was doing a season at Hornchurch, and I did pantomime there, and I absolutely adored it. I loved every bit of it, you know. And of course, I came along at the right sort of time. Well, it was the changeover, really, and I was so archetypally, is that a right word? Right for Prince Charming, because until I came along, or people like me, and there weren't many people like me, that could play Principal Boy, because Principal Boy, up until then, as you know, was played by girls. Two girls kissing and cuddling one another, Prince Charming and Cinderella, for instance. Then it came around that the teenagers of that era, you know, early 60s or late 50s, wouldn't really accept that kind of thing anymore. It was a bit old hat. The old dames didn't like the idea of people like me playing Principal Boy, but I was absolutely right for it, because yes, pop star, top of the bill, but I was gifted with a great body, which I wanted a body like American actors who could take their shirts off. That's the famous train full of stars just gone by. Yes. What was that thing called? The train thing.
The
Express.
Orient Express.
Orient Express. Goes via Denham, where all the stars live, of course, including me. Denham Village, very close to the studios, Denham Studios, where incredible films were made in the old days. And can you imagine, in the 50s, one of the biggest stars was Sabu, a young actor of colour. And I just often wonder what it was like for him back in the 50s, being a man of colour, walking around Denham. Must have been such a gimmick, because people hadn't even seen people with colour, you know. So, and he was an enormous star, Sabu. So I did my first pantomime at Hornchurch and loved it, and of course we started playing the Prince Charming part usually, because, as I say, I'd worked on my body, and I just by nature I had great legs, so, you know, in the black tights and everything, and everything looked good, and then I was playing Prince Charming, archetypal Prince Charming, cast as Prince Charming, and then the mother of the redhead actress, she was a girl star. She used to hold my hand. We used to do all these PAs, and she was about 12, and she had such a crush on me. Ginger hair, Langford.
Bonnie Langford.
Oh, Bonnie Langford, yes. So Bonnie Langford was a little girl and had a crush on, Jess the pop star. So we used to do all these PAs together in the old days, got opening garden fetes and things. And her mother obviously was very close to me as well. We were like a threesome. Like, always did these PAs together. And I was talking about pantomime, and she said, and I said to her, the terrible thing about Panto is that you don't get a lot of rehearsal. A week and a bit is as much as you get, even for the even big so-called mainline pantomimes, which of course I'm always in. So she said, and I said, you spend 3 days arguing and talking about your wardrobe. And she said, well, if you're going to play Prince Charming all your life, which you are, she said, buy your own costume. And that's what I did, and it was great advice. I bought my own costume, and then when I did a pantomime, of course, I hired it out to the producers. I said, I've got my own costume, it's going to cost so and so and so and so. I also had my own black boots up to my knees and turned over, the pirate boots. So I've got the boots, I've got the black tights and the physique. So there I was, archetypal Prince Charming, and loved every minute of it, and worked with all the comics that are known for playing the comedy in the pantomimes. Bernie Clifton I worked with him 2 or 3 times. Norman Collier. I worked with hear those birds? They want to do vocal backing on all my records. tweeting. I worked through all the kind of fashionable things. It was fashionable at one time for gladiators to be in pantomime, and they couldn't do anything particularly. And I did a pantomime with Hunter, a very good-looking boy and big following. And I thought, whenever he walks on stage, however charismatic I am, and apparently I am, they're going to look at Hunter when he comes on. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I feared that a little bit, and I've always been particular on my performance and how best to do it. So I said to Hunter, because there's a couple of scenes where, when I was speaking, the director had him walking on, and I said, listen, when you walk on, you're a gladiator, everybody's going to look at you, and the eye line's going to go off of me. So I said, why don't you wait till I've finished that particular speech? And he agreed and listened, and was such a lovely boy. And I'd finish my whatever it was I'm talking about, then he would come on. I think it's to do with direction. You can't have a character like a gladiator walking on halfway through somebody's speech. It's just bad direction. But that was that, and of course wonderful comics like Norman Collier. Dress rehearsal with Norman Collier. Director, right, this is where Baron Hardup comes on, right, so where is he? It's his cue. Norman finally comes on. This is the early mobile phones. This is your, you've missed your cue. He said, I'm sorry, sir, but I'm listening to the 2:30. That was the most important thing, very basic. And it happened time and time again. Even in when we were doing performance, he would not come on when he should, and we used to whisper, oh, he's listening to one of the races, So that was it with Norman Collier. And he also, I remember the famous stories about comics' wives being strange individuals, and because this was his first panto, his wife had in her head that this was her husband acting, playing a part, acting, which it was. But he was playing the Baron, and he was playing it for comedy because he is a well-known comic. She came backstage on the opening night and she started whacking him. She said, "Behave yourself," she said. "They're bloody well laughing at you, and this is your first straight part. You're not a comic, you're an actor." She was whacking him with a cane. So that was really very funny. And of course, you know, when you get a big cast like Walter's Meet, which is a theatre near where I live here in Rickmansworth, and the Billies, Kenneth Connor, Peter Byrne, who was in all the television series playing a policeman in that era, Cardew Robertson, Derek Roy, Arnold Ridley from Dad's Army, and special guest star Jess Conrad as Jack, of course. You get all those people together. It was rather incredible, and Arnold Ridley always called the giant the Beast, and he said the Beast is coming, and I tried to explain to him that it was what's the Jack in the Beast is the giant.
The giant.
I'm doing an Arnold Ridley myself now. It's the giant, but he kept calling it different things. The monster's coming. The this is coming. You know, and I kept saying it's the giant. It's the giant. But it never went in. But Derek Roy, I remember Derek Roy. It was his first Dame, and he was a big name. But the time he got to me, he was not such a big name. I can't quite see the year here. But anyway, he visually it was a very funny moment because he'd have one leg up on a chair, putting his stockings on, making sure that the line of the back of his stockings was straight. In other words, he's dressing as the Dame, and he's also telling me the story that his wife is having an affair with the builder, and I've had a word with the director, and I'm not taking and as he's saying this, he's dressing up as a woman, which was quite macabre, and he's making sure, are my stockings straight? Are my stockings? Yes, there they are. Anyway, he says, she doesn't know, but I know that she's having an affair. Well, I've had a word, are you sure my stockings? Yes, they're right. He said, well, because I'm telling you this, Jess, he said, I'm not taking the curtain tonight, I'm going to get the early train, and I'm going to catch them at it, he said. She doesn't know I'm coming home early, and he said, I'm going to catch. And the visual thing of a man, fully grown man, putting on stockings, playing the Dame, telling me that he's going to go get home early to find his wife having an affair with this builder, whoever it was really very, very funny. Very, very funny. And of course, you know, all the people I've really worked with, Liz Fraser, in Cinderella, Rodney Bewes, he was odd, Rodney Bewes, he was very, very odd. It's funny how all of a sudden you're playing with somebody in a pantomime and they turn out to be rather peculiar. He was a big star, of course, but, you know, he locked himself in a room, he didn't mix with anybody. So that was rather depressing for the company. Liz Fraser had a big crush on me, and I had to do all sorts of things. I had to say hello to her every day, otherwise she'd cry. That went on forever and ever. You know, all these things you have to put up with. And then, of course, was the great Jim Davidson. And the story was that I did lots of pantomimes with him before we did the famous Blue one. And he tells the story. He said, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to cast as Prince Charming, and I was really worried about who could play Prince Charming. Then I thought, fuck it, he said, why don't I get Prince Charming? And that's his story. So he got me, because I was the archetypal Prince Charming, and I did the straight version of Cinderella at the Dominion, Tottenham Court Road. And then, of course, we did the blue version, which was a animal with its own legs, of course. You know, we played the West End so many times, and we took it on tour, and it was packed everywhere. It was such a big success, and of course, having the opportunity to work with Charlie Drake was just unbelievable. And we got on so well together. Charlie Drake and I. And just recently, I read his autobiography, and we had so much in common. He was born in Camberwell. I was born in Brixton. He used the market there that I used to go to every Sunday with my mum. We had so much in common, which I didn't know, although we talked a lot, and we got on very well together. It was my job. Jim, codenamed the General, said, you know, you'll get it. He loves you, Jess. He said, but I want you to make sure that, because what used to happen to Charlie is that he would come out of his dressing room. Everything was set up for Charlie. He had a television in his room, so he could watch the television to see where the show was, so that when he got his cue to come on, he could see it on the thing. Yes, he got his cue on you know, calling Mr. Drake. That all went on, but we were worried about him actually coming on. So Jim said to me, you know, would you make sure that he's on stage every performance? So I had to go down. One of my jobs was to go down, knock on his door, and said, Charlie, no, you're all in a minute, and almost sort of walk with him on, which I didn't mind because I liked him, and of course I was in awe of him really, because he was a great. You know, I love looking at talented men, and especially in pantomime, because you learn so much. And he was probably the best probably the best I've ever seen. I mean, he was just a comic genius in real terms. And this particular day, matinee, I got talking to a chorus girl, as Jessie usually sometimes does, and I broke my concentration a bit, and I'm near the dressing room, but I'm not at the door, I'm just around the corner, and I'm talking to this girl. You know, we were arranging to have dinner that night or something, or, you know, anyway, whatever. And I'd missed his cue, and he'd come out of the dressing room saying, "Primps, where's the Primps?" Because he called me Primps. And of course I was talking to this chorus girl just out of earshot. And instead of walking towards the stage, he walked out of the stage door, which then brought him into the market in the West End. What do you call that market in the West End, where the theatre was? Not Covent Garden, no, the other one, Flower Market. It's where the theatre is, and there's a little roundabout, and there's a market. There's roundabout, and there's 3 roads. One goes down to Stringfellows, one is to the theatre.
Yes, I know where you mean. I can't think what it's
Well,
called.
anyway, he came out stage door into the Flower Market, and he's walking, and he's walking down the Flower Market, and all the guys are saying with their wheelbarrows and their things, saying, "Charlie, you're in the wrong place. Your theatre's back there. The theatre's back there." So Jim Davidson now on stage introducing the Baron, and the Baron isn't there. So Jim is standing on stage ad-libbing, which, you know, there's no problem with him. He can do, well, God knows how many hours he could do ad-libbing, probably a day in hours. But anyway, so they said to Charlie, "No, Charlie, you're in the wrong place. Go." So Charlie then finds his way back to the theatre, goes into the foyer of the theatre. One of the attractive usherettes says, "Oh, Charlie, you know, you should be on stage." He liked a lady, so he's talking to her. He finishes up getting hold of her, and she's leading him towards the stage. He then comes into the theatre, walks down the front aisle with, by this time he's got 2 usherettes on his head. 2 usherettes on his arm. Jim says, "Oh, there he is. Better late than never," or whatever, funny gags. And he finally gets him up on stage. The girls disappear, go back to do what they do, the usherettes, and Charlie gets back on stage, and before he could say Jack Rabbit, he's lost again in the scenery. He's gone into the scenery, and he's lost now in the scenery. So Jim is talking and doing it, and every now and then Charlie comes out from the scenery and says, "Oh, there you are," and Jim says, "No, there you are," and it was hysterical. Anyway, I got a bollocking from Jim afterwards about not getting him on stage, so I didn't make that mistake again, but that was really good. And of course Roger Kidder was one of the uglies, and of course Roger Kidder was a very fine comedic man, a very clever boy, no longer with us. And later on I suggested Leslie Randall, who you may remember from years ago, was a big star and a good dame. So he was a good dame. Diana Lee was Cinderella. Sherry Houston was the fairy sometimes. Hiri O'Neill was also Cinderella sometimes, and she was a great Cinderella. Then I did Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs with Jackie Pallow,
Mr. TV,
and that was very, very interesting. Very, very interesting, because that's when I learnt that, and that's when I met, well, I think I knew him before, but the wonderful Chubby Oates, who was a very underestimated dame. Very, very funny man. Very funny man, who, when he did play dame, it was the archetypal man in a costume, whereas sometimes a dame is played by sort of effeminate men, if you like, and it works better if the more manly they are, the better, if you know what I mean. And of course, he was Chubby Oates was so manly, it was unbelievable, and he was such a good dame. And that's when I got in trouble with the dwarfs, because I said, I was talking to them, and I said, how many dwarfs are there? And he said, "Well, I'm not a dwarf." He said, I'm a midget. He said, "Don't call me a dwarf, I'm a midget." So I said, "Well, what's the difference?" And apparently there is a difference. There's midgets, dwarfs, and midgets, dwarfs, and there's another word, Lilliputians or something. It's all to do with the shape of their legs. Bandy legs are dwarfs, and straight legs are this. So you have to be very careful whether you call a dwarf or a midget. They're very particular about whether they are dwarfs or midgets. Now, most people don't know the difference, but there is a difference, which I never really learnt. But there is a difference, and you can get yourself into terrible trouble if you don't call them by their right name. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Yes, and then there's the other gladiators. There was a gladiator called Rebel, who was a lady of colour. I did pantomime with her. That's when the gladiators were playing in pantos. All very good, of course. My very first panto was with a comic called Jimmy Thompson. And Jimmy Thompson and Betty Estelle. Betty Estelle was married to he was a big star. Big star. What was his name? Big star. Betty Estelle. You can't look it up, can you? The husband was a really big star, and so was Jimmy Thompson at the time. This was the Ashcroft Theatre, Croydon, but Betty Estelle produced it, and she was married to a very famous man.
Just looking up now.
Very famous man, a big comic, big star comic. That was at Croydon, so that was quite fun. The Ashcroft Theatre, Croydon, I mean, I've done so many. The Theatre Royal Windsor was really great. Sheila Matthews, Brian Burden, who's had a famous father. You'll have to look that up too. But Brian Burden was one of our finest dames. Played Ugly Sister in Cinderella with Joe Brown and Jess Conrad, which was a great, wonderful pairing. And Sheila Matthews was the godmother. That was really good. And it goes on like that, you know. Sandy Lane, I remember him. I was very interested in people with names like Sandy Lane, and that was a great dame. And a comic called Johnny Stewart back in the day, Peterborough, 1966, ABC Cinema, Peterborough, and Babes in the Wood, Millfield Theatre. That was with the Gladiator, and Vince Gardner, who was the dame. Some of the dames have been absolutely wonderful. Tracy Darnell was in that, and she was made Marion. She finished up marrying a famous producer, which you'll have to look up. Gaiety, I was the first Englishman to star, the first Englishman ever to star in a pantomime in Scotland. When I starred, after I finished playing Joseph for many years, the first pantomime I did after that was the Gaiety Theatre in Ayr. And that was rather interesting. The first Englishman ever to play the lead in Scotland in Panto, so that was the first. With a comic up there called Lou Grant. So Lou Grant was in. That was very interesting. It was a lovely place to live and stay in. And then, of course, you know, pantomime at the Windsor. Samantha Barks, who's now a big star. She played it, Emu, and the Dame Michael Chauvel Martin, and I did many pantomimes at Windsor for Bill Kenwright. One of the very interesting ones, I guess, was Theatre Royal, the Wimbledon Theatre. Jack Douglas, who was really very odd, and Dana, who was lovely, and Norman Vaughan. Norman Vaughan was going to play his first dame, and he said, because I was very friendly with him, I'd done pantomime with him before, we got on very well together, we really did hit it off. It was amazing because he just he did something which I always do, but he just made sure that I'd got it right. And that was when he was starring in this pantomime I did, where Diana Dawes was born, Swindon. We were such a success, we went back there twice with the same kind of lineup, him starring and me special guest as Prince Charming. He arrived on the first day absolutely immaculate. I'm always immaculate, but he was immaculate. Second day, when we rehearse, he comes casual shoes or jeans type thing open. And I went, you know, the contrast between how you were dressed yesterday and how you're dressed today. He had a code name. I can't think of his code name now because it's years ago. Anyway, he explained to me that when you're a star of a show, the first time the cast see you, you've got to be a star, but the most important thing is you've got to look like a star. And I remember he had those very, very casual shoes without laces, you know, moccasins. Very, very, and lovely, all that. So, I mean, I always do that anyway, but lots of people don't. So that was that. I mean, Dick Emery wouldn't even rehearse with me. I'm special guest at Wimbledon in whatever it was, and he's playing Dame, and we're all there first day, you know. I've but not taken Norman's advice, but I mean I always looked like perfect, you know, in those days. So I'm there first day, read through, and Dick Emery won't walk it. You know, we're walking around, sort of just plotting it, you know, marking it and stuff, and his roadie or manager type bloke, young man, can't think of his name, but he was quite famous. Was it Peter Elliott? Something like that. Walked around. Anyway, cut a long story short, he would never rehearse with me. And it was very odd. And then when we opened, I came down to the prompt corner because it was the opening night and I just wanted to come down. You know, you usually come down before you're called. And he arrives as the Dame. Then it was embarrassingly, it became very embarrassing for me because now he's the full Dame, and he's playing it like he's a frustrated woman. It was full on groping me, kissing me. I mean, to such an extent that it was embarrassing. Oh, you are lovely, Jess. Oh, you are. And I thought, I can't believe this. This is the man who, you know, hated me all through rehearsal. Now he's dressed as a woman, and he is a woman. Mm. So I had to get away from him, and I walked away from the prompt corner, you know, back to my dressing room, and he followed me, and he's going, "Where's that Jess? Where is he? I know he's hiding." And this went on. I mean, right. Show's finished. He says, the show's finished. Now Dick Emery's got his motorbike gear on. Right, he says, brum, brum, brum. He's sitting. He said, "I'm going to the restaurant." He said, up the road. You know, there's a lovely Italian restaurant up near the Wimbledon Theatre that we always go to the acts there. He said, "We're going to he said, "but don't bring that Jess Conrad because he nicks all the birds." He said, and now he's the full butch, you know. He's on his motorbike, brum, 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 and he's got all the gear on, the scarf around his neck that's blowing away in the wind, brum, 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 and then he got up, and don't forget, don't bring that Jess Conrad, don't bring him, brum, and off he's gone to the restaurant. So I couldn't believe that this comic could be two people completely. You know, he's when he's the Dame, he's a really gropey old Dame. And then when he's back as the man, he doesn't like me anymore. So it was a very strange mental thing that I could never really work out. But there it was. That was him. And when you look at it from afar, you know, you look at it and you say, well, this man's a genius. He's a great turn, great actor. Yes, 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 yes. All those things. But on top of all that, he's very peculiar.
You must have met some more peculiar people over the years.
Yes, I think we are all a bit peculiar.
We've got to be.
We've got to. I mean, Jack Douglas was unbelievable. He's playing Idle Jack, and yes, he's got the costume on, overalls. But he's got a medallion on, gold medallion. He's got a ring on which he said to me, "Look at this, Jess." And he's got the ring, and he said, "Go out front and look at this." So I went out front, and he stood there dressed in his costume, which is the poor pot costume, the old overalls, but he's got a gold medallion round the neck, and he's got a gold, what do you call it here, with the armband on.
Like a bracelet.
Bracelet. He's got the gold bracelet, all things that poor men don't, but because he's Jack Douglas playing a poor man, he wants the public to know that Jack Douglas is, famous and got. And he had this ring on that he said, "Look at that," and it's thing, and he said, "However good you are, Jess, if I'm on stage, they're looking at me, because they look at the ring. That it catches the light because it sparkles." And I thought, you bugger. And it's true, and he's on stage dressed as a tramp, if you like, with the overalls on, yet he's got this ring, and you can't keep your eyes off the ring because it's reflecting, So, but he was a very nice man. I got on very well with him. We went and did a play after that, something, Seagoes over Sorrento. But he knew all the tricks of the trade, and he was ruthless in it. I remember they said he didn't know his lines help him when we were doing Seagoes over Sorrento, and I was with him, I helped him, but it was all a pretense. I even went to his dress room on the dress rehearsal to put him through it. Came on, he knew every line, and all of a sudden I thought, I better watch myself here. This guy's right, he's right on top, and I'm I'm running second here, he's head of the race. So I thought, you clever bugger. So I learnt a lot from Jack Douglas. You can't take it away from him. He was a great performer and a very clever performer, but ruthless in show business terms of upstaging and using all the tricks of the trade. Yeah.
Something I need to ask you, from obviously starting off as a amazing singer, who taught you to be a star?
Well, it's strange because I've often thought of this, but when I became a star, it made no difference because I'd always been a star. I was the best looking boy in the school. I was the best fighter in the school. I became a teenager and I was the best looking teddy boy. I've always been. I remember Diana Dawes was sitting with Shirley Bassey, and I walked into this room and she said to Bassey, "If that doesn't turn you on, you're already dead." So I've always had this charisma, if you like. Jim Davidson used to say to people when we do all this work together, he said, "Watch Jess work this room," and I quite naturally I do. I mean, I go into a room and I talk to everybody. It's not I don't, because people started sort of talking about this. It never occurred to me but I did it naturally. I walk into a room and everything revolves around me. Not that I'm not doing it purposely. It's just the way I am. I do remember one time. This was the time when I met my wife. I'd come back from rep, so I was living with the girl I was in rep with. We came back. We were in Aberystwyth. Her name was Billy Hammerberg. She was an Australian actress who finally went back to Australia and became a star in that prison series about all women. There was her. I was doing a major movie for Betty Box called what was it called? Anyway, with an actress called Pauline Hahn, American actress, came over to play it. And so I had two. I won two, three. I had three girls at this party that I was with, and I walked over to Renee. I saw Renee, who was very very different. She was Miss Camay. You know, you look a little lovely each day. She became Miss Came, but she was a debutante, and she was dressed differently. She looked different. She spoke different. And I remember I sauntered over to her and put my arm, against the wall, so she was like against the wall, and I leaned over like, Charlie Charm, or like, Robert Mitchum, or whoever I was at that moment, and said, you're attractive, what about us getting together? Some corny old line like that. She said, well, maybe, she said, when you get rid of her, and her, and she pointed to the four girls in the room. She was perfectly right. I was working the girls in the room. It was quite macabre. Yeah. So what was the question?
It was about who taught you to be a star.
Oh yes. Well, I think okay. We can go back. We can go back further. I suppose we can go back further. My mother, South London beauty queen. So that started, of course. So I came from sort of good-looking. My father was a jazz pianist, also a very good-looking man. My mum was very beautiful, South London beauty queen. But she always wanted a girl. So I was like, I had a dressing table then with mirrors that went in and out. Nobody else had these. I had a dressing table. She used to say, oh, you've got wonderful cheekbones. Put Nivea cream on your cheekbones, which I did, still do, which makes them stand out. Oh, she said, you're such a lovely, handsome man. Boy. You're going to break so many women's hearts. And she went on about me breaking women's hearts. She indoctrinated me into breaking women's hearts. And I thought it was my quest in life, because Mum wanted it to break women's hearts. So I mean, it was subconsciously what I did. They fell in love with me, and I treated them rather badly. As I've said in my book, a good night out was either having a punch up or having a knee trembler, and both were equal, because I did like to have a fight.
Weren't you worried about losing the looks in a fight? You said you were a great fighter, but
no, because I could fight, it was, and then people say, where does the image come from? And that's quite very simple as well, because when I was a kid, there was a wrestler called Gorgeous George, and very handsome wrestler, and he came on stage, came into the ring and looked into a mirror, and I thought, God, that's funny. That is so funny. And then Liberace came along and took the mickey out of himself. Then I became a pop star quite by chance. No singing lessons, nothing. I thought I would put on a persona of being this, which I thought people would laugh at. And people still do if they get it, but there's still people that don't get it, actually. They think that, it's all serious. But so I did this sort of send-up type person, because when Roger was alive, we used to talk into the evening, and he liked to drink. And we would talk about us being crippled because we're handsome men, that we live in a very it's a very difficult existence that we live in, because if you don't flirt with a woman, they think you're big-headed. when you flirt with them, which you have to, otherwise they think you're big-headed, then they get upset if you don't follow it through. So it's a very thin line you have to walk, because everybody thinks you're big-headed. And we were talking about when you walk in a room full of men, I walk in and say, "Hi fellas, the poser's here," and that fucks them up completely, because that's what they think and that's what they're going to say to me. But if I say it to them, I'm ahead of them. And Roger always worked on the same thing. He sent his looks up, and that's the only way you can do it, because being a good-looking man is like being a cripple, because you're attacked straight away, you know, because of your look. So you have to. It's a curse.
I know the feeling.
Yes, of course.
It's
of course. well, yeah, no, I was talking to somebody that knows, of course. And you give people gifts as well, so which you don't have to do. You must cut that out. That's not necessary.
It's just a mug.
It's just your presence. So, I mean, that's in a thing. And the trouble is that my stage persona, you know, opening line, "I know what you're thinking. You're expecting a much older man," you know, and you know, yourself. But then when I'm at straight acting, I'm not that person. So people do get confused, because they think, then when am I going to start that? So it's very difficult for. Well, I was silly, really. I thought, you know, when you're young, and I watched Sinatra, you know, in suddenly dramatic films, and a variety star as singer. I thought, well, if Sinatra can do it, I can. But of course, you can't. You can't be an actor and singer and be successful at both. We try, and some people, you know, make a good stab at it. I think I made a good stab at it, but you can't. I mean, years ago, actors couldn't be in Panto. So things have changed a lot since then. But you're all in kind of boxes, you know. They're never going to take you seriously, you know, if you're a pop singer and you do pantomime. The actors years ago wouldn't do pantomime. Actors wouldn't do pantomime. Actors wouldn't do anything in variety. But things change all the time. But my time was you couldn't really I mean, I had a good stab at it, but you can't really be taken seriously as an actor and be a pop star and have the persona that I've given myself to survive. I've given myself a persona to survive, which I used successfully through my career. Now I'm an old man. It doesn't matter. But and you can't use that persona anymore. You can say you're the best looking man in the world at what am I, 95, 85. If there's anybody better looking than me at 85, please send in your picture. And we'll put the pictures together. But so it really doesn't matter anymore. Yes, I could be the best looking man in England at 85. I could be the best looking man in the world at 85, but who gives a fuck now? It doesn't matter.
Were you ever tempted to go dame?
It did cross my mind, because so many people did it. But then my first foray into it was the fact that I take size 11, and do you know what they say about men with big feet?
Large footprints, yeah.
Yes, and the large footprints, and even then, my shoes are tight. So the first thing was you could never get high heels size 11 and a half. So that kind of was the thing. But I did think of it once, but it soon disappeared. But I thought about it and then thought, well, I don't like it that much, because I don't think I'll be that good. I mean, I'm much better playing Prince Charming with my tongue in my cheek, you know.
Mm.
And then, of course, I played. I finished up playing Cinderella's father, which didn't work because I still look bloody younger than the fella they cast as Prince Charming. And Prince Charming would always, complain. And I'd look at Prince Charming and go, fuck me, look at his skinny legs. He looks terrible in tights, you know. So there's me playing Cinderella's father and looking better than Prince Charming. So it was very difficult. So pantomime-wise, I then started to play the villain, which was so successful. I never ever thought of playing the villain, but then I did. And of course, there's nothing better than a vain villain, is there? And I saw that Matt Boy do it in the that's where I got the idea from. That actor who played in Robin Hood, he played the Sheriff of Nottingham. That fine actor who's still going now, and he played it, with this charm and everything. And so I played. I played Flesh Creep, as a very vain villain. Of course, it worked perfectly well. You know, I was, when I came on, I had to be lit, and I'm over here, and the thing, you know, and it was wonderful. So I had about 5 years of playing, Flesh Creep. Or whatever the villain is in pantomime, different bits and pieces. Flesh Creep was the best one, and playing in vain was ideal. But because when I was growing up, the villain always had a beard, and was fat, and spoke, with his deep voice. But then I came along and played the villain, as a very attractive villain, and it really worked. And that was mainly from that actor that played it in the film. I just nicked that, and it worked wonderfully well. In fact, it was probably a better villain than a Prince Charming, but I doubt it.
What was it like though, coming out getting booed?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Because I'm sure nobody's ever booed you.
No. It
fainted maybe, but never.
It was
booed.
different. Yeah, it was a different experience. It was a different experience. Yeah, I mean, pop days. There's two things that jumped in my mind. We used to arrive, me, Screaming Lord Sutch, John Layton, or whoever, and we used to make bets backstage who would have the first rundown. And I said, it was always me. Even though I never had a hit record particularly, I was just voted England's most popular singer in 1960. I won the equivalent of the X Factor in a show called Oh Boy, Wham, and Boy Meets Girl. England's most popular singer, New Music Express. So it didn't matter. They had number one records. John Layton, this one, that one, this one. But we used to be backstage. The general public don't know this, but we used to be backstage and we used to bet who would have the first rundown. And I would always say, I will. And that means when the kids all get up and run to the stage. So Lord Sutch was late coming in this day, and he said, "Are the bet still on?" I said, yes, the bet we can do in the usual thing. Well, and you think you're going to get the first round down? I said, yes, I'm going to get the first round down. And what they used to do in the days when the pop concerts were on, they would put tarpaulin over. Is that the word? Tarpaulin.
Tarpaulin.
Yeah, over the band, the pit, because that wasn't used anymore. The bands had to be behind us, the band, the guitar, drums, 4-piece band there behind us. So the orchestra pit, they put tarpaulin over it, and you would arrive and they'd say, "Don't go. This is your line. Don't go over that line because it's tarpaulin. You fucking fall in the pit. You'll never get out." So we all knew that. Sutch his act was Screaming Lord Touch. He used to wear horns, like a hat thing with horns. Always late, always missed it. Never rehearsed. They know my stuff. Show starts. Where's Such? Oh, he'll be here in a minute. 10 minutes before it was due to go on, Such arrives. So okay, he's arrived. Good. So now he doesn't know about the tarpaulin, does he? So he runs straight out on stage, goes straight towards the audience to get them at it, and disappears through the tarpaulin. And then through the top is the horns. So all you see are the horns, that thing like that, And then the stage keeper or whoever, stage manager had to run down and drag him out, and it was. But those sort of funny things used to happen in the rock and roll days. Lots of funny things like that, rundowns. It was important that you scored the first rundown. Yeah, good days.
How did Jim approach you then about doing adult panto? Because it was the first time it had ever been done in the UK.
Yeah, well, let me tell you the story of Jim Davidson. Let's preempt this by saying, first of all, Jim Davidson likes a girl, women. There's nothing wrong with him in terms of that. He's a lustful man. He likes the opposite sex, as I do. I'm a star, and he's an up-and-coming comic. And I and two other stars are asked to judge a competition of comics. The three or four comics came on, and us three celebrities. I forget who the other two were now, but they were big celebrities. And we voted, and I saw Jim Davidson. He was one of these comics, and I voted for him because I thought he was the best, and he actually was, but he didn't win. So I went backstage. In those days you could wear fur. I had a fur coat, and two birds I had with me, because I used to like two birds. Beautiful birds, two models, and he likes birds. So I came into his dressing room, and he was standing there, his mouth open, because there was a big star coming backstage to see him, and with everything he likes, two women, and the fur coat, the whole thing. And I said to him, "You didn't win tonight, but you were the best comic out there, and you're going to be a big star." And it's the only time I've ever seen sort of Jim. He didn't do any funny bunny like didn't. He was very humble and thanked me, and then that was it. Years later, when he cast me in whatever it was, the first thing he ever cast me on, I can't think now what it was. What would it have been? But I suppose it was Cinderella, was it? Yes, it was Cinderella. He remembered. Well, first of all, he said, "Who can I get to play Prince Charming?" And then he thought, "Fuck it, I'll get Prince Charming," because he remembered me from that thing. He not only remembered me being, good looking and with the girls, but I'd come backstage to see him. You know what I mean? And he thought that he would return the favour. So that was nice, wasn't it? He never forgot that, and that was how it all started. And of course, but it was typecasting, of course. You see, he said, when I walked on, it was in Cinderella, when, I don't know whether, my first entrance is in a cat suit. Yes. And I come on and all the girls scream.
You did have it was quite tight, if I remember, in a certain place.
Yes, it was. And all the girls screamed. And he said, there was I couldn't think of anybody else that could do that. Now, the strange thing is, it was second nature to me, because that's what I do every time I work. When I do my cabaret, and stage or wherever I am, I walk on with a yum, and the girls all scream. So all I was doing was nothing different than Jess always does. I walk on stage and women scream. Women still fall for me now. That's mainly because they're too old to stand up. But that's a different story.
Did it feel weird though, taking part in a naughty panto?
Not at all. Isn't it? It is strange, isn't it? Because I was really sort of. I wasn't Jim Vincent. I wasn't a slimy pop star. I was the boy next door pop star. I was, Jack Good, who what's the word? Jack Good, who created Jess Conrad, said to Jim Vincent, you're a horrible person. I'm going to put you in black leather, and I'm going to put a green light on you, and you are the devil. So, and he was giving people their different things. I said, what about me, Jack? Who am I? Oh, he said, you're the boy next door, walking through a cornfield, drinking a glass of milk. I went, oh, thanks, Jack. I thought, what the fuck's that? But that's how he saw me, and that's how he presented me. The boy next door with the open smile.
Branding.
He knew exactly what he was doing, because I was the equivalent of the American singer who was great looking but couldn't really sing. I can think of his name, but I can't think of it just at the minute. Fabian. He said, "You're England's Fabian." Thank you. It's better than being the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I'll take that.
How do you look after yourself now then?
Obviously I don't do. What happened with me was, I wanted to look like an American actor. No English actors could take their shirts off, and even when I wasn't in the business, it was so visible that Dirk Bogarde takes his shirt off and he looks like shit, and they're awful. Curtis, Burt Lancaster was the my man. I never wanted to look like Hercules, but Burt Lancaster was my hero. He took his shirt off, and it was, that was very. It was all started, I think, when I saw him in that film on the beach with. Who was he on the beach with? That actress. Not Ava Gardner. There's a beach scene in one of his famous films. From Here to Eternity, will it be? Don't know. He's on the beach, and I thought, that's the body I want. Not Hercules, any of those, but Burt Lancaster. So in my day, there were no gyms. There was no such thing as places like that, where there is now. You're members, aren't you? And you all go, and there was none of that. You could find weights in different sometimes in school halls. There might be a weights thing, and if you found a place like this where weights were, and you went in there and you worked out, I was always followed by a limp-wristed man home afterwards. It wasn't a macho thing to do, to look after your body in the old days. It was a very gay thing to do. So it was difficult to find anywhere to work out. But when I toured as Joseph, I had 2 dressing rooms. Bill gave me 2 dressing rooms. One dressing room was for my weights. I used to pump up, especially the last one of the scenes where I meet Pharaoh. I think I used to do 20 push-ups with certain weights. I don't know whether it's 50 on each or 25 on each. So the company manager's first thing goes on the van is Jess's weights, and before the scenery, make sure Joseph's weights are on the van, on the lorry, And then when we get to the next theatre, I had 2 dressing rooms, one next door to me for the weights. Most of the brothers were gay, so they weren't bothered, but they could all come in and use them. Pharaoh, who was straight. There were 2 straight guys. There was me, Pharaoh, and the bass player. I think everybody else in the show was gay. And we were a wonderful company. They all had different jobs. One had a job of, when I arrived on the Monday, to have the newspaper out to tell me what films were on. Another one job was to find which gym I could use, and he would ring up and say that Jess Conrad, who's playing Joseph, can he come to the gym 3 times a week? Oh yes. And he doesn't mind having photographs taken for the local paper. Oh yes. And then another brother would find a restaurant to do a deal for us so that we could all go and have dinner every Friday night, wherever we were, in our own private room upstairs. So we were a very band of brothers. Yes, we were very, very, very tight knit. So that was it, really.
What would be your advice then to, not that there ever will be another Jess Conrad, but what would be your advice to men
I remember,
who want to get into the business?
because I was very, 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 very close with Roger. He was a lovely man. And I said to him, "What do you do? How do you work out?" And he said, "Hey, this is what I do, Jess." And I remember he put his hand on the sink and went up and down 3 times. Like on the floor, up, pushed up. He said, "That's what I do." Roger was lovely. He walked quite well, but he couldn't run. When he ran, all his arms went funny. And Rocky Taylor, who was a friend of mine, used to double for him, and directly 007 had to run. It was Rocky running. What was your question?
Well, it's about getting into the business for young men who may be listening. What advice would you give any sort of up-and-comers, be it singers, be it actors?
Well, it was very good for me because I couldn't afford RADA, or was a bit late for RADA. I was a film extra for a long time. Then I kind of realised that a guy came in and said a couple of words, and he had his name on the chair. And I was very happy being a film extra, very happy, because I went from being a teddy boy up to no good, leaning very heavily towards gangsterism and what happened was, I suppose, is that in the early days the movies glamorized gangsters. In other words, Edward G. Robinson, James Cagney, a young boy of 12 thinks they're real people. So and then I was looking at in the newspaper one day. I was about 12 or 13, and I saw the Cray brothers with a blonde woman. Now, I'd never seen a blonde woman before because I lived in Brixton, and you didn't see blonde women because I don't think they could afford the dye or whatever. I mean, and I thought, my God, the Crays, they're gangsters, and that's not, that's in England. So I went to the West End to become a gangster, because the cinema glamorized gangsters, and I was very vulnerable, I suppose, in that kind of way. And I thought, I want to be a gangster. What else do you become? The greatest thing in the world would be to be a gangster like James Cagney and Edward G. Robinson, because you don't think of them as actors. Later on, when I realised that James Cagney was a little round fat boy who danced, I couldn't believe it, and that Edward G. Robinson was a famous Jewish actor that played Yiddish parts all over America, mainly in New York and things. That he was a bona fide proper actor. you don't realise those things when you're a kid. So I went into the West End to become a gangster, and I was doing quite naughty things when there was a coffee shop called Le Grand, which a lot of actors went to. Much later on, I used to sit there many days with Michael Caine and Terry Stamp, and I shared a flat with them for a while. But before that time, so what happened was I was in this as a trainee gangster, if you like. I was in this coffee shop, and I just seen Caesar and Cleopatra, and a guy walked in that I'd just seen in the movie, and his name was Larry Taylor, and because he had such a distinctive face, he had a beard and he was tough looking. He was only an extra in the film. But he had a very strong sort of face, and I said, "Cool, fucking hell!" I said, "Hang on a minute." I said, "I just seen you in a movie." He went, "Yes," and I said, "How'd you get in the movies?" He went, He said, "Well," he said, "you're a good-looking boy." I said, "Well, there's nothing wrong with your eyesight." I didn't say that. So I said, "How do you?" He said, "Well," he said, "you got a good wardrobe, obviously." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, go around and see the casting director for film extras is just by the stage door of the London Palladium. Go round there and see Mrs. whatever her name is." So I went round there and met this woman, and I'd said, "Larry Taylor." "Oh yeah," she said, we all know Larry. Sent me round here because I thought there might be some chance of me becoming a film extra. So she sort of thought to myself, well, she's heard all this before, so she said to me, "Have you got a swimsuit?" I said, "Yes." Now don't laugh, because people didn't have swimsuits then. Not everybody, a swimsuit was something that you might buy if you're going down to Margate or something, It was a luxury item, a swimsuit. So I said yes, and she went all through things. Have you got green trousers? Have you got brown trousers? Because people didn't have trousers and lots of things, It's a bit like today, where all they seem to have nowadays is a top and a pair of bloody jeans. But in those days, people didn't have. I mean, we all had proper clothes, but didn't have lots of stuff. Anyway, then comes the killer question. She said, lean back in the chair, because she knows this answer's gonna finish me off. She goes, "Good," she says, "that's all very well. Now, tell me, do you have a dinner jacket?" And then they look at you because they know you're going to go, "What? A what jacket? What are you talking about?" I said, "Oh, yes, yes." She went, "Really?" Leaned forward. "You have a dinner jacket?" I said, "Yes, oh yes, my dad's a mason, you see, and they have a ladies' night once a year, and he bought me a dinner jacket when I was much younger, so that you have to wear a dinner jacket." So I became a film extra, and that was it, really.
This leads me on to my last question. Your dream pantomime. So you can be in it, you can choose the production, the theatre, and your cast can be alive or dead, or a mixture of both.
Oh, don't. That's very difficult, isn't it? I mean, that's very difficult. That's very difficult. I mean, I would say, flesh creep, but then I thought, however good I was as a villain, and I was bloody good, I should imagine that a young Jess Conrad as Prince Charming. Oh, it can't be me, can it?
Yes, you can be in it.
A young Prince Charming. I think that I must have been, because I do look in the mirror and I see how wonderful I am and was. It must have been absolutely. Well, mirrors don't lie. Archetypal Prince Charming. Yeah, I think I'll be Prince Charming. Oh dear, this is so difficult, isn't it?
Have you had a favourite singers over the years?
Singer.
Singers. Cinderella.
Oh, well, Cinderella that I've worked with, you mean?
Yes. Or who would you love to have played Cinderella?
I think Dana had a quality of innocence. I think when I worked with her, I was a bit of a shock, you know, because I said to somebody, I can't believe it. I said, did you know Dana's eyesight's bad? And my roadie said, what do you mean? What do you mean Dana's eyesight's bad? I said, well, she doesn't fancy me. Because she was such a thing. So I think maybe Dana, yeah, maybe Dana.
Buttons.
Buttons. I have to say, Joe Brown was a good Buttons. Joe Brown was a good Buttons. Joe Brown was a good Buttons. And I could imagine that Freddie Starr would be, but he would have to be so disciplined that it probably wouldn't work.
Keep him on a leash, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but he has the makings of perfect Buttons. Baron, perfect Baron. Baron hard up. David Lodge. Cinderella. I think a good Cinderella would be Anita Harris in her early days. Yeah, I think Anita Harris. Would be great. Yeah, I think she'd be a good Cinderella.
What about the Ugly Sisters?
Danny LaRue.
He'd be the glamour, wouldn't he? So you'd have to have somebody the complete opposite.
Norman Collier jumps up, but I probably wouldn't cast Norman Collier, but it would be an interesting though. It's difficult, isn't it?
It is. Where would you have? Where would you have the performance?
Where would I have it?
Yeah.
Oh, I tell you something. When I was a kid, I played 5 shillings and went to the London Palladium every Monday night and stood at the back, which you could do then. I saw Mickey Rooney. I saw Mickey Rooney, Sophie Tucker. I saw everybody there. And then when I played it myself so many times, and people would think me saying that, but I did, because being a member of the Variety Club and all the different things, the Masons, everything that moved I was a member of, and I've done so many shows at the Palladium, not just me on stage by myself, but me walking across with 3 other famous young actors or pop stars or this, but I always seem to be at because I was a Walter Rat, a Mason, or this or that, and they always did shows at the Palladium, so I'd walk the stage so many times. And once you get on, and I've done my act there, which is quite famous on if you can get it on my tweets and things. The Palladium is such a wonderful room because once you walk on the stage, it's so friendly that the whole place seems to come to you. You don't have to go to it. It's there. It's all around you. It's the most incredible atmosphere. And I've played most theatres in England, but there's nothing like the Palladium, and you can't really explain why. But it just seems to enfolds you. It's just, you know, you're tucked up in bed there. It's wonderful. So yes, it would be the Palladium.
Is there anything you wish you'd done differently?
Oh yes, lots of things. Yeah, lots of things. People say to me sometimes, "Did you ever do a Carry On film, Jess?" I said, "No, I turned them down." What? I said, I didn't turn them down. I was with Al Parker, the biggest agency in England, who looked after Robert Morley, Richard Todd. I was offered the first Carry On, well, not the first, second, I think, the one after the lovely, my wonderful friend that died, who had a wonderful brain, handsome man, had a great brain, didn't he? Who did the first one? Oh, God, he was such a good friend of mine. I went into his dressing room once. He said, congratulations on your first wrinkle. And he killed himself laughing because I went straight to the mirror.
Bob Monkhouse?
Who?
Bob Monkhouse?
Yes, Bob Monkhouse.
Carry On Sergeant, wasn't it?
Carry On Sergeant, yes. I think it was the very next one. And my agent said, no, because they didn't pay money, A, and B, back in those days, they didn't pay money. That was the thing, and they were cheap and nasty. Yeah, that was a big regret. Yes, that was a big regret. Yeah, because if I'd done those, there probably there may have never been the boy that took the parts I was offered. He's in America now.
Jim Dale,
yeah. Because they wanted somebody bit poppy and a bit acty. I'm not saying that I would be better than Jim Dale, because I think Jim Dale was wonderful, but I think I would have fitted in somewhere there. They probably maybe have put him in as well. But yeah, yes, they're one of the. There's lots of things that one turned down. Oh, Calcutta, of course, but that was really weird because, like most of these things, it's not because that I'm pop starish at all in my acting thing, but I always thought to myself, would Elvis do it? All the things I've turned down, which have not been many, is because when I've asked myself that question, would Elvis did it? And it comes up, no, Elvis wouldn't do it. Elvis wouldn't do it. Oh, Calcutta. I remember the audition. The audition was so intense, you know. Read the script. Yes, how old are you? Do you do this? Do you do that? Yes, could you just read that script again? What, you know, the meaning. And then, okay, Jess, thank you very much. And as I was about to walk out the door, oh, by the way, could you just drop your trousers? They did it like it was an afterthought. So I turned it down.
Too big a part.
I turned it down. And on the bus one day going to football, Death Do Us Part. What was his name?
Warren Mitchell.
No, the young one.
Oh, Anthony Booth.
Anthony Booth. What a silly bugger Anthony Booth was. He'd finished the series. He'd become an alcoholic. Got so drunk one day with his fag, burnt his hands. Used to walk about those two little girls, one who of course became Prime Minister. Terrible state. He said on the coach going to football, I've just been offered Calcutta. I said, yes, so have I. He said, you're going to do it, Jess? I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, if you do it, I'll do it. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Honest, you will do it, will you? I said, yeah, I'll do it. Knowing very full well that I wouldn't do it, because Elvis wouldn't do it. So, come the opening day, I was there on the opening day. I took my best mate, Kenny Lynch. You know, we're both there. What did we do? We did something funny. Did we wear moustaches? We both on the front row. We're both on the front row. I can't remember. Anyway, both in the front row. And I said that I was going to do it, and so I don't know what, he must have turned up at rehearsal and said, "Where's Jess?" And I wasn't there, or maybe they to get him, if he said, is Jess Conrad going to do this? They may have said to him, "Well, he's showing interest," when in fact I turned it down. So so me and Kenny Lynch, my best mate. We met when we were Teddy Boys in the West End when we were 15. I miss him terribly. We were the opening night, and Tony Booth came on, and he was standing whose knob came down to his knees. And Anthony Booth, you couldn't see it at all. I said, "Where's his Corey gone, Gepper?" That's Kenny Lynch's code name. He says, "He ain't got one, love." So, I mean, for a heartthrob to do that, it was just big mistake. And once again, would Elvis do it? No. So, yeah, funny old life.
Well, Jess, thank you so much for taking part in the Panto podcast.
Thank you. Now, listen, you will dig. Can you dig anything out of that doesn't put me in prison?
Of course.